Is the Headless Horseman Irish? Well, tag the Evogus Fáilte. Hi, hello, and welcome. Jon O'Sullivan from the Irish Pagan School. And I have been exploring all of the monstrous and weird and wonderful creatures that exist in our mythology and our ancient lore. And not so ancient lore, interestingly, in more modern folklore, we have a number of different references to something known as a Dullahan or a Gan Ceann. So the word Gan Ceann is the Irish words for gone, as in without, and Ceann, head. So a Dullahan, or known as a Gonkian, is a headless rider, and sometimes the headless rider also rides a headless horse. Now, we've a number of different tales that pop up in the folklore of Ireland around headless horsemen, but there's also another link between the headless horseman and something known as a cóiste for. The cóiste for, or the silent or death coach, is a death omen. So the Coast of Vorse tends to be more like an omen or a service, much like a banshee, where it would turn up and notify that people have died or people will be dying in a household soon. Whereas the Dullahan is just the rider. And the Dullahan is different because the Dullahan is sent out to pursue a singular person. And so the Dullahan can speak, but it will only speak one thing, and that is the name of the person it pursues. So if you come across a Dullahan and it does not say your name, get out of the way, run and hide, flee, get across a river if you can, cross a bridge. Any of these things may help you to avoid its wrath or its ire because it's not hunting you. If it does say your name, though, regardless of where you go, what you do, you are marked for death. So there are a number of different descriptions when we talk about Dullahan. Almost all of them, of course, have gone Cian. They are without head. Some of them talk about them carrying the head. Others, there is no head presence at all. As I mentioned, sometimes the horse also has no head. A lot of them talk about being a dark man, and that's where some part of the Dullahan, a dark one or a darkling person, is on the dark horse. So they're both a black rider and a black horse. But there are also talks of a red-coated soldier-like rider on a white horse. In another version of it, the Dullahan doesn't ride alone. He rides with hounds and wields a whip. Now, more modern iterations and stories have added on elements to it that the Cushtabor has skulls on it or axles made out of femurs, or the whip that the Dullahan uses is made from the vertebrae and it's a spine whip. Uh, the oldest kind of stories don't mention that at all. It may be more Disney affectation or other versions of horror narrative that have been added on to the tale over time. Um, the Pumpkin Association, as you see, I think mentioning the Sleepy Hollow story and Ichabod Crane, pumpkins aren't associated with the Dullahan. In fact, pumpkins aren't actually associated with Halloween or Samhain initially because the jack-o'-lanterns, the first jack-o'-lanterns, were made from turnips. A little bit of side knowledge there if you're interested. But yeah, Dullahan are said to be these otherworld entities. Now, how does one become a Dullahan, or where did Dullahan come from? There are a number of different stories for that too. In one version, it is a hapless person who is doomed and they fall on a splinter or a branch or a log, and that's what causes their head to come loose, and therefore they are cursed to ride the roads in that instance. There's another story though, and this one actually, I copied this one out from Duchas because I thought I'd read it to you. It's an interesting one. It says it was collected in Ennis, County Clare, and it was Gerald Griffin who told it to Veronica Griffin. There lived in Lochville an officer. He was summoned to join his regiment, and as he was going, he called one of his soldiers and asked him to take care of his gold until he returned. The soldier said he would, and as he said so, the officer drew out his sword and cut off his head. Every night afterwards, at 12 o'clock, a headless man riding a white horse was seen coming down the avenue. Sometime afterwards, a lot of men went to look for the gold, and when they thought they were near the gold, the horsemen came and they fled. It was never heard that anyone went to look for it afterwards. So this comes from Duchas.ie, the National Folklore Collection, specifically the school's collection, where children were sent home to collect the stories from elderly people, family members, or not in their communities. But this talks about specifically someone being transformed into a Dullahan to protect the gold of this wealthy officer. Now, in some other versions, and again, if you read on Wikipedia, again, never trust a lot. You need to go to your references, by the way, folks. There's stories of like if you carry gold with you or you control gold at a Dullahan, it will be afraid of the gold and it will flee from it. I have not been able to verify that in any way, shape, or form. There's another story of two guys actually who are out, and one guy is visiting his friend, and he's staying over, and they're having a few drinks, and it get late, and he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna cut across your field and head home." But as he's trying to cross the stile, which is a crossing point between fences, he hears a horse coming down the road. And so he stops to let the horse ride on by, but it doesn't ride on by. Instead, a Dullahan rides up to the opposite side of the stile. And so when the guy sees the horseman and the headless horse in this instance, he panics and flees and runs back. Of course, when he goes back to his friend is like, fuck off, you've had too many drinks. Would you ever go the fuck home and sleep it off? The guy tries again, and as he approaches the stile, he hears the galloping of hooves, and up comes the Dullahan. So he returns home, and the third time, his friend is like, okay, fine, I'll go with you. And he picks up a blacksmith hammer that he has, and they walk across the field, and sure enough, as they approach the stile, galloping of hooves, and up comes the Dullahan. At which point, the second friend, who had not seen the Dullahan until this point, completely panics. But even in his panic, he throws the hammer at the Dullahan, which passes through the Dullahan and it disappears, leaving the hammer on the roadway. Other stories talk about the cóiste, the death coach, that it is possible to just observe the death coach as you're walking by. You'll see this black coach pulled by black horses, driven by a Dullahan. Sometimes the horses like have plumage and they have heads, other times they don't, but it is this silent coach. There's an interesting one here because a lot of times this narrative is, oh, well, all these creatures occur in rural stories, or it's crossing fields, or it's windy back roads. But there's an example here, which I pulled out from the records from Rathfarnham, which is in Dublin. And many tales are told of the lonely houses in Rathfarnham to this day of the death coach, which noiselessly moved about on secret errands. No one seemed to know whence it came or where it went, but all agreed that the dead body was its load, and headless its horseman, and sack-muffled feet on the steeds of death. So this goes into a little bit more information that it was this silent, and that's the silent aspect, this cóiste mhór, that as it moved around, you would observe it, but you wouldn't hear it. It would be clip-clopping down, but it wouldn't, like you'd see it moving, but there would be no noise as it moved. But everyone knew that to see it was to know that it was loaded with dead people, that dead people were gone and taken into the coach to be taken on and away. And again, in this case, it was the Dullahan driving. So interestingly, we have this, as I said, a Dullahan who provides a death omen, a death service to kind of carry those or to notify of those who are going to die soon or to be carried away by those who die. But also then there's this other Dullahan who is a hunter who is given a particular name and they are sent to hunt and find that person to let them know that they are marked for death and maybe even to collect them. So that is the stories that we have of the Dullahan, the Headless Horseman. It is a fascinating one and it is a weird one to experience. As I mentioned, if you do come across a lot of the stories talk about hearing the cóiste mhór and seeing like in some cases that you can hear a cóiste mhór, and it is an experience I've had personally myself in Dublin, in a park, a very old park in the middle of Dublin, where I used to live. It was the middle of the night. There was absolutely no traffic around. I was walking the dog around the park and I heard coach wheels, as in wagon wheels on a sprung coach, which you don't get in Dublin in the 20,000s. So yeah, I heard it and I kept on walking, but then it turned and it was getting louder. And I will say I absolutely fucking ran and got out of the park as soon as I could. So do headless horsemen exist? Well, we have records that say they do. I've had my own personal supernatural experiences, which I, of course, am skeptical about and question. But I've had my feelings about it too, and I explore it often. And knowing that I come from a long old family in Ireland, I'm an O'Sullivan, and the O'Sullivans do have banshees and also death coaches linked with our old name. It's possible that there are notices, or possible that these death messengers may come to notify me or come to find me. So, with that, thank you very much for joining us. If you would like to know more about Irish mythology, folklore, creatures, and spirituality, all you got to go do is go to the Irish Pagan School. We have a lot of free resources there. And I actually taught a class on death messengers if you want to take a full class. If not, pick up something free. Go to irishpagan.school/free. Years worth of free resources or more that you can dive into, watch another video, listen to some podcasts, and just explore it for yourself. So, what do you think? Have you had any experiences with cóiste, with death coaches? Have you heard of Headless Horseman? I'd be interested to know your stories as well. Until next time, look after yourself, take care, and so long. Goodbye.